Hi everyone, this is Nathan Turner. I'm your host of IODD Talks. I'm so delighted for this episode today. We're going to be discussing voting rights with Kevin Truitt and Kyle Pigman from Disability Rights Ohio. And this is especially important to me because I believe that as citizens, we all have the right to vote and the responsibility to exercise our votes if we're so inclined to do so. So I want to welcome our guests. Hey, Kevin. Hey, Kyle. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Hello,
Hello,
Nathan.
it's great to be here.
Thank you, me
Great to
too.
meet you both. I'd like to give you both a chance to introduce yourselves and tell us about the work that you do with Disability Rights Ohio.
Kevin can be first since he's the attorney.
Okay, thanks, Kyle. Hi,
Perfect.
everyone. My name is Kevin Truitt. I'm the Legal Advocacy Director at Disability Rights Ohio. Disability Rights Ohio is the protection and advocacy system for people with disabilities in the state of Ohio. We're a civil rights organization advocating for the rights of people with disabilities across the state of Ohio. Kyle and I are both really passionate about this work and excited to talk to you all today about voting rights.
I'm Kyle Pigman. I'm an operations assistant at Disability Rights Ohio. I've been with DRO for 8 years, and also and before the pandemic, we would go to sheltered workshops, different enclaves and psychiatric hospitals, and you name it, we would go to talk about voting and helping people getting registered to vote. And I've been very passionate about the voting. I've enjoyed going up to doing voting outreaches, and we had to do voting outreach via Zoom 2 years ago because of the pandemic.
Thank you so much. That's really important work. And I want to get the show started really by focusing broadly on why voting is important. And I'd love for you both to have a chance to reflect on that. Kyle, if you don't mind, maybe we could get started with you.
I've been a voter since I was 18 years old in 1987. Voting is important because you get to decide who is elected to office or voting on levies or issues like schools or municipalities, and also voting is part of your civic duty, and we're one of the fortunate ones in the country, despite they've had tried to take voting away from different parts, but you're practicing your civic duty, and you get the right to vote. Despite we don't ever take that right to vote away.
Well said, Kyle.
Thank
I
you.
second everything that you just said. I think it's really important and critical that people exercise their right to vote, as Kyle said. Choosing who our elected officials are at all levels, federal, state, and local. These are positions of power where these elected officials make a lot of really important decisions that affect our lives. So it's really critical that we have a voice in choosing those elected officials, choosing those leaders, things that are important to me and important to our clients, people with disabilities in Ohio. There's an affordable housing crisis throughout Ohio and throughout the country. It's really hard to find affordable housing, access to health care. There's a direct care workforce crisis where it's really hard to find waiver providers or home care workers so people can live in their communities instead of institutions. The COVID-19 pandemic, all of these really important issues. It's important to exercise our right to vote. So we put into office people who have our same values and our same principles and want to fix these really big problems. So we're a nonpartisan organization, so we'll never tell anyone how to vote or whom to vote for. But it's important to be informed about these issues and exercise your right to vote. And there are a lot of different ways to vote, which we're going to talk about soon. And people have rights, and it's important to understand those rights too. So yeah, really important stuff.
Absolutely. Excellent. Great points. I think that for a lot of us, if people with disabilities aren't exercising their right to vote, potentially they're going to have leaders that may not represent their best interests. And so that's another really important reason why voting is important. So moving on a little bit, what do we need to actually cast the vote in terms of the registration process and actually voting when we vote, either in person or early or via absentee?
Yeah, so one of the most important things, this is essential to being able to cast a ballot, you have to be registered to vote. So the registration deadline is Tuesday, October 11th. If you want to vote on Tuesday, November 8th for that election, you have to be registered by October 11th. So that's essential that you be registered to vote. When you're voting in person, so there are a lot of different ways to vote, which we'll talk about in a few minutes, one of which is to vote in person on election day, Tuesday, November 8th. Another is to vote early in person at the early voting location in your county. It's usually either the Board of Elections office or another location that the Board of Elections will designate. And then you can vote basically at home through an absentee ballot. That's the third major way to vote. If you're voting in person, either early voting or at your polling location on election day, very important that you remember to bring identification with you. So usually that's going to be your driver's license or a state identification card, something that shows your name and your address. It can actually be your former address if you have a driver's license or state identification card. So it doesn't have to have your current address, as long as you're at the right polling location. So if you moved, but your driver's license or state identification card hasn't been updated, that's okay. You just need to make sure you go to your new polling place. You can also bring with you, as a form of identification, like a bank statement, a paycheck, a utility bill, a military ID. So those are some other ways that you can show identification at your polling place on election day or at the early voting location. Last point I want to make on this question is we typically recommend people have a plan for how they're going to vote. So you may decide, I want to vote early. I don't want to wait until election day to vote. Either I'm going to request an absentee ballot or I'm going to go to the early voting location. We just recommend that people have a plan in place because you never know what's going to happen on election day. If you're sick or unable to get transportation that day and you're scrambling to try to figure out how to get to your polling location. I've heard of that happening before. So it's always good to have a plan A, a plan B, a plan C for how you're going to vote, because you want to make sure your vote is counted. So yeah, and one last point I'll make on this. If you have any questions about any of this, you can always contact Disability Rights Ohio, our intake department. We can answer any questions that you have, or if you need advocacy on any types of these issues, or just have questions, you're unfamiliar with the process, or you haven't voted before and you need support, or you need information or questions answered, please reach out to us.
Thank you. I think it's great that there's so many ways and options to be able to cast that ballot. It makes the process more accessible for everybody. And Kyle, did you have anything you wanted to add about this question?
And also, I don't advise bringing your social security number, but I do remember, because now they require just the last 4 digits of your social security number. If you, and then when I vote early at home, I put my driver's license number and my birthday to or social security number.
On the absentee ballot.
Yeah.
Yep.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome. And that's and also And if you do not know where you're assigned to vote, you can call your county board of elections on election day or ahead of time if you plan to vote on election day. But it's okay to request the absentee ballot, but you have to do it at before a certain time.
Yeah, you have to, the Board of Elections has to receive your absentee ballot application by the Saturday before election day at noon. You don't want to wait that long, but that's the absolute last date and time that they can receive your absentee ballot application. If you want to vote from home and not vote early or at the Board of Elections or vote in person at the polling location on election day.
Yeah, because now mail is still become more undependable now, and
Yeah.
because I've even had to put 2 stamps on it just in case.
And while we're talking about the options that people have to vote, one of the questions I get is, what do I do if I request an absentee ballot and it comes in the mail, but I decide I want to go and vote early?
I've heard that question before. So if you change your mind, if you request an absentee ballot, but you change your mind and you want to go vote early at the Board of Elections or vote in person at your polling location on election day, you can still do that. They'll give you what's called a provisional ballot, which means they just need to double check that you're not trying to vote twice or not going to vote twice. But that's something that they will confirm after election day, and then you can confirm with them, with the Board of Elections in your county, that your vote has been counted. But so they'll give you a provisional ballot. It's almost identical. It's basically identical to a normal ballot, and then they just need to verify that you're not voting twice. But you can definitely change your mind once you request an absentee ballot if you decide you want to vote in person. Lots of people like to vote in person, and I like that experience. I've been doing it like Kyle since I was 18, and I enjoy going to my polling place and seeing the poll workers and getting the I voted sticker, right? So yeah, I've always enjoyed that experience, and I like doing it in person. So you can change your mind. Yeah.
Yeah, voting in person definitely has its advantages. I agree with you. Is there anything more, Kevin, that you want to say about voting options and how and where people can vote?
Yeah, so we've talked about the 3 major ways in which someone can cast a ballot in Ohio. Very briefly, I'll review them again. Voting in person on election day, Tuesday, November 8th. Go to your polling location. You can find out your polling location by calling your Board of Elections in your county, or the Ohio Secretary of State's website has a function where you can search for your polling location. You can also call Disability Rights Ohio, and we can help you through that process. So voting in person on election day at your polling location, that's the traditional way people vote. Vote early at your Board of Elections or another location that the Board of Elections has designated in the weeks leading up to election day. That's the second major way. And then, like I said, voting by absentee ballot, you submit an application. The Board of Elections will send the absentee ballot to you. You can fill it out at your home. You can take as long as you want. You can take a few days, you can take weeks, as long as you mail it back on time, which is the day before election day, then you're good. A few other ways to vote that not a lot of people know about, and Kyle talked earlier about these outreach visits that we do across the state. We try to do these in years where there's a presidential election or a midterm election. We'll go around to like nursing homes or workshops or different types of residential facilities to talk to people about their right to vote and the different ways they can cast a ballot. This year, we're actually going to county jails across the state of Ohio. We know there are large numbers of people with disabilities who are incarcerated in county jails, and they still have the right to vote. As long as they're not incarcerated for a felony conviction, they still have the right to vote. And so, but there are very low voter registration rates for people who are incarcerated. So we want to change that. And that's why we've been going to county jails across the state. But so another way that you can get an absentee ballot, if you're in some type of residential facility or like a nursing home, an intermediate care facility, an ICF, a jail or prison, or you're homebound, you're living in your own home in the community, but because of a medical condition or your disability, you're not able to leave your house, you can submit a special absentee ballot application, and you're basically requesting 2 officials from the Board of Elections to bring the ballot to you at your house or wherever it is you live and help you fill it out if you need help. And then those 2 officials will, once you've completed the ballot and signed it and done all that, they will take it back to the Board of Elections for you and make sure that it's processed appropriately. So that not a lot of people know about that. And that's something, glad that we have the opportunity to be here today to be talking about these things, because again, not a lot of people know about that option. So yeah, that's another way that people can cast a ballot. There's also another special absentee ballot application form. If you're hospitalized unexpectedly, like the weekend before Election Day or the day before Election Day, or even that morning, early afternoon, you can request a special absentee ballot if you're in the hospital or your minor child is in the hospital, and 2 elections officials from your Board of Elections will bring the ballot to you at the hospital so you can vote. Again, this is another process that not a lot of people know about. So if you're in that type of situation, very welcome to reach out to Disability Rights Ohio. It's kind of a confusing process, but we can help you through it. So you can still vote even though you're in the hospital. So we've gotten a lot of calls over the years, especially on our election day through our voter hotline, which I want to talk more about, for people who are in hospitals and they're going through a really rough time, but they still want to be able to vote, which is very admirable. We want to support those folks. And so there are options for people if you're hospitalized, you're going through a medical emergency, but you still want to vote. Yeah, there are options. So there are a lot of options for people to vote. And if you have questions, if you have problems, please reach out to us. We'll try our best to help you through it or answer questions or whatever it is you need help with. Hopefully we can help you.
You mentioned your voter hotline, and I think that segues directly into my next question, Kevin, is what are some additional accommodations in the voting process for people living with disabilities?
Yeah, so there's a lot of different accommodations that people may need as they're exercising their right to vote. So one of the most common things is if you're going to vote early in person at your Board of Elections, or you're going to your polling place on Election Day, if you want, you're allowed to bring with you a friend, a family member, an advocate, someone you feel comfortable with who can like help you through the process, answer questions that you may have, things like that. You're allowed to bring someone with you. Not a lot of people know about that, but you have that right. There are some exceptions. That can't be your employer, an agent of your employer, a candidate who's like actually on the ballot. They wouldn't be able to come with you, but those in an agent of your union, if you're in a union, those are the exceptions. But other than that, you can bring any person of your choosing with you to your polling location or to early voting at the Board of Elections. That's a form of accommodation for people with disabilities who may feel intimidated by the process or just want to feel more comfortable having someone there along with them. So yeah, that's and I should say poll workers are often very, very friendly and wanting to help and answer questions and support you. So even if you don't bring someone along with you, they're usually very, very helpful poll workers at your polling location. And the boards of elections folks are often very friendly and supportive. So, but there are all sorts of accommodations which people may need. For example, folks who are blind, your polling location are required to have accessible voting machines for people who are blind. That's an accommodation. If you are unable to write your signature in the poll book, this is another example, and some people use like a signature stamp. where it's just a stamp with their signature. And that's different than how a lot of people sign their names, but it's acceptable. That's an accommodation that they should accept for you. Or if you can just mark an X and you can't sign your name, that's an accommodation. So polling places, boards of elections, the voting system in general is required to accommodate people with disabilities. So if you need something, it feels like there's a almost limitless number of potential accommodations that people could potentially need. Feel free to reach out to us, to Disability Rights Ohio, if you think you need some type of accommodation to be able to register to vote or to cast a ballot. You need help with something, or you need something to be a little different. Please reach out to us. We can help you navigate that and potentially advocate for you to get the accommodations that you need, so you can vote. We want the system to be fully accessible for everyone, including people with disabilities, to be able to vote. So please use Disability Rights Ohio as a resource. We really want to be able to help you through these processes and to be able to cast a ballot.
That's a really important point, Evan, because I think everybody has the right to vote, and so our election system is designed in theory to be as accessible as possible. But can you talk about what Disability Rights Ohio does to protect the rights of somebody to vote?
Yeah, so we've talked about our voter hotline. So that's on Tuesday, November 8th, election day, from 6:30 a.m. to 7:30 p.m. That's election day. So we'll have attorneys and advocates ready to help you through any issues or problems or answer any questions that you have. You can also call our intake department anytime before election day if you have questions about how to get an absentee ballot or what types of identification you'll need if you're voting in person. If you have any questions at all or need any help, please reach out to us before then, before election day. So that's one way that we help people. When they call us, we try to answer their questions or help resolve any problems or issues they have. We talked earlier about the outreach that we do across the state of Ohio. Kyle's done a lot of that outreach over the years and is really good at it. Just talking to people about the things we're talking about today, right? The different ways to vote, the rights you have, the rights to accommodations, the rights to a process that's accessible to people with disabilities. So that outreach is really critical, so people understand their rights, understand the ways in which they can cast a ballot, accommodations that they may need, just so they feel more comfortable with the process. And that's really important to us, to be out in the community talking to people. We also will do podcasts like the one we're doing now. We'll do media interviews. We'll do different types of like public communications, so we can get the word out about our hotline, about Disability Rights Ohio as a resource, talking about rights, talking about ways to cast a ballot. We will monitor different legislation at the federal or state level, which could impact the right to vote. Kyle identified that as an issue in the very beginning. There's been efforts across the country to make it harder for people to vote, which is very concerning to us. So yeah, do a lot of different things to make sure voting systems are accessible to people with disabilities.
Excellent. So what are some of the steps to resolution if somebody's vote is challenged?
Yes, this doesn't happen often, so I don't want anyone listening now to be worried that this is going to happen or intimidated that this could happen. But it's even though it's a very, very unlikely circumstance, it's still a possibility. So if that ever happens to you, if you're at your polling location and someone, this would be terrible, but if someone says that person has a disability, they're not allowed to vote, that would be very serious if that happened. But if that did happen, and a polling worker, a poll worker doesn't refute that person, or they say that your right to vote is being challenged, you should ask for what's called a provisional ballot. I mentioned that earlier. If that any type of situation where you're told that you can't vote, whether whether it's because they say you're not registered, or if they say you don't have the mental capacity to vote, that would be a very serious accusation and potentially illegal. But you should ask for a provisional ballot and then contact Disability Rights Ohio. We would want to talk to you about what happened and investigate that, because that would be, I keep saying this, but that would be a very serious situation if someone tried to stop you from voting. I mentioned earlier that you want to make sure you're at the right polling location. That's one reason a poll worker could say you can't vote at this location. You could try, but your vote isn't going to be counted if you're at the wrong polling location. So you want to make sure you're at the right polling location. Assuming you are, and someone says that person can't vote, you want to ask for a provisional ballot and contact Disability Rights Ohio. So a lot of people that we work with, a lot of people with disabilities have a legal guardian. And we hear this a lot. There's a lot of misinformation about whether a person who has a legal guardian can vote. And I want to make this very clear that if you have a legal guardian, you can still vote. That does not prevent you from voting. There's very, very limited situations in which a probate court, your county probate court, appoints legal guardians for people. A probate court could say that person is not allowed to vote. It's very, very, very rare. It almost never applies. So you should assume, unless you've heard otherwise, very, very unlikely, that if you have a legal guardian, you can still vote. So if a poll worker said, you have a guardian, we're not going to let you vote, they're almost certainly wrong. Should ask for a provisional ballot and call Disability Rights Ohio, and we will try our best to resolve that situation for you. If you have a legal guardian, that legal guardian cannot tell you how to vote. They can't vote for you, obviously. No one can tell you how to vote. People can give you their opinions, right? But no one can say you have to vote for this candidate or for this issue. I'm your legal guardian. I get to tell you what to do. That's not right, and that's not legal. So yeah, if you have a legal guardian, you still have the right to vote, and call us if you have problems or questions about that, because we hear a lot of misinformation, a lot of confusion out there from people who think they have a legal guardian and they can't vote. It's just not true.
Excellent. Thank you so much. That's great information.
Yeah.
We're coming toward the end of our time together because time flies, but I wanted to kind of wrap our show with just some general advice and suggestions from both Kevin and Kyle about good general places to go to learn about voting issues and to get assistance with the process and learn about rights and accessibility.
Kyle, do you want to go first?
Sure, I wrote the trusted local news sites, not the ones that would spew out but trusted news sites like the Columbus Dispatch, USA Today, or your local television and radio station, League of Women Voters, and other voting outreach groups too that has the issues and stuff. Because every state can be different with how they approach but because in Ohio we have the League of Women Voters, and I think they're all over the country too.
Yeah, that's really good advice, Kyle. So Disability Rights Ohio, we have a lot of information on our website about rights and how to vote, how to get an absentee ballot, things like that. The ACLU of Ohio also has a lot of really good information on their website, ACLU of Ohio. Kyle mentioned the League of Women Voters of Ohio. They're a really good resource. They do a lot of like candidate comparisons and things like that, explaining issues that are on the ballot. They do a really good job with that stuff. I I think I always recommend that people talk to others in their lives who they really trust and who have the same values and principles as they do. Just to talk through things. You don't have to tell anyone how you're going to vote, but it's good to talk through with like your friends and your family and hey, this is how I'm feeling about this issue or this candidate. What do you all think? I value your opinion. And you can share your opinion with others too if you feel strongly about a certain candidate or a certain issue. I think it's important to talk about those things. I always joke that the last thing that we should rely on is the commercials, the political campaign commercials that
Then,
yeah. So yeah, just talking to people in your community and your circles, friends, family, neighbors, coworkers. I think that's really important for us to be talking about these things. Like which candidate is addressing the affordable housing crisis or the direct care workforce crisis? Things like that, the issues that are really important to all of us, to many of us. Yeah, Kyle, did you have more to add?
and and because some will bring up school levies or municipal levies like to fund police and fire in some, because there's some communities smaller than Columbus or other suburban locations.
And do you all have contact information in case anybody has questions about their right to vote?
Yes, so our phone number is 614-466-7264. Our intake department is open Monday through Friday, 9 to 12, and then 1 to 4. So in the morning and then in the afternoon, you can always call us if you have voting questions or voting problems. And then, like I said earlier, our voter hotline on election day, Tuesday, November 8th, will be open all day. The polls open at 6:30 a.m. Our hotline will be open, available starting then, until the polls close at 7:30 p.m. So we'll be around all day on election day.
And also, even if you're the last voter, they still have to let you vote even after the polls close. They still have to let you
as long
vote.
as you're in line by 7:30 p.m. they have to, Kyle's right, they have to let you vote. So can always call us again, 614-466-7264. Our website, disabilityrightsohio.org, has a lot of really good information about voting, but also there's a intake request form that we have on our website where you can reach out to us electronically and we can get back to you if you have voting questions or voting problems. That's another way to reach us. Yeah.
And don't forget the 1-800 number. You got, if they're not in the Columbus area. It's 1-800-282-9181. That's the toll-free 800 number.
Thank you both so much for this valuable information. We're getting toward the end of our time together, but I do appreciate both of you coming on and having this really important discussion with me about accessibility with voting rights. And I look forward to hearing from you all as you continue to do your public outreach work and hearing from our listeners as they share stories with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nathan. Thank you for all the good questions.
Thank you,
Talking to
Nathan. Nice
My
meeting
pleasure.
you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Having this discussion really kind of reminds me of a phrase that I hear from people living with disabilities when I talk to them all across the country. There's this phrase around voting rights: my voice, my vote. And because a lot of people that live with developmental disabilities really don't feel like they're able to have their decisions respected and their voice heard. So my voice, my vote is sort of that rallying cry, and it comes back. It was ringing true to me throughout the episode when Kyle and Kevin were talking about how the voting rights system is designed to be accessible because it belongs to everybody and because we all have the right to vote, but then in turn we have the responsibility as citizens to educate ourselves about the issues and make that decision about who we want representing us. We might hear a lot about, the Senate and the governor and the president, but we vote many times. Sometimes we vote every year. It's not just big things that we vote for, but we're voting for a lot of local representatives and county representatives. So voting is more than just once every 4 years. And as it's part of our responsibility as citizens, if we want to learn about the issues and the people that are on the ballot and make those really important decisions. And our vote matters. Thank you, everybody. That's the end of our show. I want to close by reminding you all that we really enjoy hearing your stories. So please reach out to us on social media. Until next time, I'm your host, Nathan Turner, and this is Ohio DD Talks. Have a great day, everybody. Bye-bye.